Ready?
Yep.
Okay, friends, good morning once again. We have very few minutes before we start our meditation. I'm glad that you all are here this morning. I was talking on Salayatana. Salayatana means sense, sixfold sense basis. And yesterday I stopped how these sixfold sense bases develop through the bodily sensation. Uh, as we know, body is part of materiality, and the sensation, perception, thought, volitional formations, attention, contact, all these are materiality factors, and their connection, consciousness has a connection between these two. I mentioned an example of how until upekha arises, and when upekha has, since upekha has two sides, upekha based on numerous objects and upekha based on single object, and finally that upekha also divided into two, tammata, atammata. Atammata is not thinking that it is mind. Tammata means thinking that it is mind. So we stopped there. We didn't have much time to go beyond that. And also today I like to start the dependent of arises every moment in the Dhamma, the qualities of the Dhamma is we recite, and all these six qualities we can see happening in us. And therefore, in the dependent origination, we also must be consistent. That is why I repeat it every day. The formula must be consistent. Formula must not be translated in any other way other than when this being, this is, this arising, this arises, this not being, this is not. Now the word indicative pronoun, this must always be used, this, not this, that. Why is that? Because this is happening in us. Any moment we pay attention to what is happening in us, we see these two. For instance, in the first quality of the Dhamma is Swaghata, well expounded. Well expounded means the Dhamma that can never be changed, be otherwise, as Buddha taught, as he mentioned in Itivuttaka Pali, from the time he attained enlightenment till he passed away, all these 45 years, what he taught will remain to be the same. For instance, impermanence is impermanence whether the Buddhas come into existence or not. Now this impermanence we can see happening right in us this very moment. While I'm talking, while you are listening, you experience impermanence. If you don't listen, if I don't talk, still we experience impermanence in our breath, feeling, perception, thought, and volitional formations. They are changing all the time. That we see. They change because Whatever arises from something changing. Whatever passes away is passing away because it is its nature. So rising and passing away is happening all the time in us, and this teaching of this is called Swaghata, well expounded. Well said. Well said, because nobody can make it any amendment, subtraction, addition, and so on. No, nobody can edit that. Edit the Buddha's teaching. Dhammo Sandittika. Sandittika means seeing in this very life, here and now, as it is happening. That also Buddha used another term Buddha used for this. That is seeing things as they really are. So this also is happening right now. Sandittika within oneself. I gave some examples in the past. When greed arises, at the same time suffering arises. When joy arises, at the same time happiness arises. We feel relaxed and see the results within ourselves. We don't have to depend on somebody else and ask somebody else how it happens. Another example I gave you: when you are hungry, you feel the hunger, you feel pain. When the hunger arises, pain arises. When the hunger goes away, pain goes away. So, this is, therefore, when we say this being, this is, meaning hunger being, pain is. Hunger not being, pain is not. When hunger fades away, whilst hunger is fading away, pain is fading away. Like that, you can look at yourself, this reality happening right now, this very moment, any moment in your life. All you need is attention, which also is a part of mentality group. In the mentality group, mentality is one of them. And I wanted to show this, want to mention this example, because we may not have a clear idea of how dependent origination takes place every moment in our life. We say for saying, as I have heard people say, it is a present moment experience. Now, when you take the examples, look at the examples, you can see how it is happening in the present moment. In order to make it clear, I repeat it. I will repeat it again several times until this becomes very clear in our minds. Now, friends, we start our metta practice. Sometimes we get late a little bit, but that is inevitable because of our various technical things. My technical friend is helping. Okay. Let us begin our metta practice. You can see on the screen. May all beings be happy and secure. May all beings have happy minds. Whatever living being there may be, without exception, weak or strong, long, large, medium, short, subtle or gross, visible or invisible, living near or far, born or coming to birth, may all beings have happy minds. Let no one deceive another, nor despise anyone anywhere, neither from anger nor ill will should anyone wish harm to another. As a mother would risk her own life to protect her only child, even so towards all living beings, one should cultivate a boundless heart. One should cultivate all the world, a heart of boundless friendliness, above, below, and all around, unobstructed, without hate or resentment, whether standing, walking, sitting, lying down, or whenever awake. One should develop this mindfulness. This is called divinely dwelling here, not falling into erroneous views, but virtuously out with vision, removing desires for sensual pleasures, One comes never again to birth in the womb. Let us focus our mind on this very wonderful, noble, wholesome thought. We want to cultivate metta for all living beings, especially those who are in pain and those who are grieving for losing their friends and relatives, and those who are supporting them to recover, those who are finding some remedy, vaccine or medicine or pills, and those who are supporting them in financially and other ways and encouraging them. They all must be free from pain and suffering and return to normal health and live long in good health. With this, we start our meditation on mindfulness or insight meditation or vipassana meditation. Vipassana is seeing things in a very special way. The special way is the way that not ordinarily we look at things. Things mean some aggregates. As we breathe in, we notice inhaling, touching our rims of our nostrils and expanding our chest area, expanding our lower abdominal area. As we breathe out, our lower abdomen contracts, chest area contracts, and we feel the breath leaving our nostrils. And then as we breathe in and out, we also notice a gap or brief pause between inhaling and exhaling, and we notice all this. Noticing doesn't mean using words or concept or naming, but simply becoming aware of them. And along with that, we become aware of the feeling of breath, perception of breath, attention we pay to breath, consciousness, we become aware of all this. As we become aware of them, they all rise and fall along with the rising and falling of the breath. The feeling that arises when we breathe in vanishes when we breathe out, and new feeling arises. Similarly, perception, attention, consciousness, all of them change as we breathe in, and they change as we breathe out. And then the body becomes calm and relaxed. The breath naturally becomes calm and relaxed. The mind becomes calm and relaxed. Then our desire for clinging to anything fades away. In fact, this is one goal we must keep in mind, to liberate ourselves from suffering, letting go of desire, clinging, craving. And then when this happens, we have some degree of feeling of relaxation. And then whatever resentment or anger we have in the mind also fade away, because we are not holding on to anything. Anger or resentment arises only when we hold on to something. Grip, not letting go. When we let go, we relax, and resentment also goes away with that. Along with its disappearance, metta takes its place, and metta begins to we begin to feel metta exactly as it is. Then arises compassion, knowing there are so many individuals suffering. Knowing being suffering, compassion arises. And then joy arises seeing the results of these three: letting go, metta, compassion are wonderful mental states, relaxing, calming, soothing, comforting mental states. Then joy arises. When joy arises, happiness arises, and then gain concentration. All these dependently arising. And here you can see dependent origination even there. And then when we gain concentration, concentrated mind reflects back on our experiences, such as feeling, perceptions, thoughts, and consciousness, and see them changing in the subtlest way and deepest way. Any tiny little thing in our mind and body is continuously, consistently changing. They all are in a state of flux, in motion, not static. And that gives us even greater joy and happiness because we don't hold on to anything. With this, I let you continue your practice, and we have very few minutes, about 20 minutes. We continue this practice in silence. Dukkha patta ca nidukkha, bhaya patta ca nibbhaya, soka patta ca nisoka, hontu sabbe pipanino. May the suffering be free from suffering. May the fear struck be free from fear. May the grieving be free from grief. So too may all beings be. This is our earnest wish, friends. That is why we are practicing metta. With this metta thought, we wish all those who are suffering now and future be free from suffering. All those who have fear of numerous things, fear that this COVID might affect them, their relatives and friends. They are afraid even to go out to do even their very simple ordinary things. They are afraid that they have fear. Then there are many people who have sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair, knowing that their friends and relatives, some are passed away, some are in pain and suffering, and they sorrow, lament that they are suffering. And we want them to be free from their suffering. And all other living beings in numerous ways, they are in pain and suffering. And we want to wish them all to be peaceful and happy. Let me continue this talk on dependent origination. I started saying something about the way how it works And even in the qualities of the Dhamma, we can see dependent origination, such as I mentioned, Swakhata, Sandittika, this very moment when I have a scratch, I feel the relief. That very moment, very simple thing like that. Uh, Sandittika. Akalika also sometimes people translate it to be referring only to supramundane attainments like soon after the magga thought, phala thought arises like that. This Dhamma refers not only to supramundane state. This Dhamma, if every person can experience it right now, this very moment, that every person is not enlightened, every person is not in the Magga Phala, in the supramundane state, every person is an average person, person with greed, hatred and delusion. So Dhamma refers how that Dhamma, how that Dhamma operates in oneself, and one must see that Dhamma operating within oneself. Uh, Akalika means it does not affect by time. It was what happens to us in the living beings in the past. Same thing happens to us today in this life. It doesn't take much time to experience it. I gave some examples. When greed arises, pain arises exactly at the same time. This happened in the time of the Buddha. This happens now. This will happen in future. And this will not be affected by time. One cannot say Dhamma worked in the time of the Buddha, now it doesn't work. One cannot say therefore Dhamma works all the time, always, so long as living beings exist. When anger fades away, joy arises exactly at the same time. As anger fading away, joy is arising. And as generous thought arises, happiness arises at the same time. When loving friendliness arises, we feel very friendly and relaxed at the same time. This is the true universal nature. This is exactly what the Buddha mentioned even in the Kalama Sutta. When we practice metta towards all 10 directions, at that time the mind is so calm, relaxed and peaceful. That happens at the same time. That is akalika. Akalika. You don't have to wait to find the results after death. It happens while we are, and that is why we always have to pay attention to the mind, and so have yoniso manasikara. That is, be aware of what is happening now. Yoni means origin, source, the beginning, root. When joy arises, we must go to the root and see how this joy arises. We can see joy arises because we are relaxed. We don't have resentment in our mind. That is the root, non-hatred. When the mind is very clear, pure, we know the root, that the mind is free from delusion, ignorance. As ignorance disappears, mind becomes clear and our wisdom arises. And all this happens exactly today as they happened in the time of the Buddha. This is called akalika. Kala means time. So the Dhamma is not affected by time. And this is what exactly Buddha has mentioned in Samyutta Nikaya. If anybody wants to see more details of these words, they can go to Samyutta Nikaya. And then next word in the Dhamma is ehi pasiko. This reality reminds us to see itself. Ehi means come, pasika means seeing. The, the truth should be seen within oneself as it is happening. And this truth reminds us to be very conscientious, look at the conscience, look at the mind, introspectively look at your own mental state. You cannot cheat yourself, you cannot deceive yourself. You see what is happening in the mind right now, right at at the moment you are doing anything. Look at the mind. People say sometimes to be mindful all the time throughout the day. They sometimes say when you wash dishes, pay attention to the dish. Who doesn't do that? The fact that you are paying attention to the dish doesn't mean that you are mindful. What Buddha meant to be mindful all the time is that look at the mind while you are washing dishes, whether you have greed, hatred, delusion, jealousy, fear, or non-hatred, non-delusion, non-jealousy, wisdom, compassion, metta, and equanimity. See whether they are happening in your mind, they are arising in your mind. And then if they are positive things, try to cultivate them. If they are negative, use your mindfulness to let them go. Use your mindfulness means this is impermanent, this is impermanent, this is impermanent. Look at that and let all the things happening go as they go. You cannot hold on to them. And that is the way to be mindful every time, any moment in the day or night, whenever awake. As the Metta practice, Buddha says in the Metta practice discourse, Karaniya Metta Sutta, Tittang Charang Nisinova Sayanova, sitting, standing, walking, lying down, and so forth. Look at the mind all the time and see how we honestly, sincerely cultivate these wholesome things, wholesome mental state, and let go of unwholesome mental state. Because every time we have unwholesome state, we have pain. That is dependent origination formula. When unwholesome arises, pain arises. When unwholesome state fades away, pain disappears, and so forth. So we have to see this happening all the time in our mind. That is called come and see ehi pasika. Open-eye means we see that we are leading towards the liberation. Open-eye means leading onwards to be liberated. Slowly and gradually we develop our mindfulness, awareness, insight, purify our mind, and that development of purification of mind leads us towards the liberation of all the psychic irritants, all unwholesome mental state, greed, hatred, and delusion. That is called open-eye, leading onwards towards attainment or liberation. Then pachattang vitabbo vinyohi, every wise individual, this Dhamma is to be understood by every wise individual. Every wise individual is the individual. Wise here means vipassana jnana. Vipassana jnana means the knowledge of knowing rising and falling, Udayabhaya jnana is called vipassana jnana. Udaya means rising, vaya means falling. Seeing rising and falling all the time in everything improve our wisdom. And such a wise person, one who develops this, is called a wise person. Such a wise person can see within oneself pachattang veditabba. Veditabba means to be known, to be seen by all wise individuals without any excuses or confusions. When we look at ourselves, we see this reality, and that also is the quality of Dhamma. And in all these examples, you see dependent origination. This arises when this arises. This passes away when this passes away. You can apply this formula to your everyday, every moment experience. And the word ayatana is used for several meanings. We are talking about the salayatana, mentality, materiality, depending on mentality, materiality, sixfold sense basis arise. Sixfold sense basis. For the sense basis, the Pali word is called ayatana. Ayatana. Ayatana means where there is consciousness in operation. Consciousness is in operation. We say eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body and mind. In all these senses, consciousness must work together to make them work, make the senses work. To be conscious, to be aware, to become aware. But the word ayatana also is used for immaterial attainment. You know, there are what we call jhanas. They are called rupa jhana, arupa jhana, and so forth. Jhana means the state of deep concentration without hindrances. And there are two categories. When we use any material objects like the body, the breath, the parts of the body and so on, we use them to gain concentration. That concentration is, and that attainment is called attainment of rupa jhana. Rupa means the form. Form has elements. When we use one of these elements to gain concentration, that concentration is called jhana. Now, after that, there are four other mental states which are perceptions. And they are called akasanancha ayatana, viññānañca ayatana, ākiñcaña ayatana, nevasanyana sanya ayatana. So even there you can see ayatana. Ayatana there is used for perception. Akasa, we don't use any material object to gain concentration, but the space is used as an object of our concentration. That is called akasa ayatana, perception of the space. Perception of the space. There are many kinds of perception. There are 10 perception mentioned in the Girimananda Sutta, but this is not mentioned there, but other perceptions are mentioned. And in this attainment of jhana concentration, the word perception is called perception of the space. Then perception of consciousness, viññānañca ayatana. So consciousness, the itself becomes perception. And then the perception becomes so fine that even that appears to be not existing. And therefore it is called nothingness, perception of nothingness. And then perception of nothingness itself is not uh, steady, it vacillate between the perception of consciousness or perception of non-consciousness. And that is called neither perception nor non-perception. They all are called ayatanas. They are not called jhanas. Why are they called ayatanas? Because they all have consciousness. Now, there is another place where the word ayatana is used. That is not any ordinary person even can understand, but Buddha really very compassionately with deep wisdom, he called that an ayatana. What is that ayatana? You can find it in Itivuttaka, one of the texts. Actually, no, Udana, not Itivuttaka, Udana, called Patiligama Sutta. There Buddha said, there is bhikkhus that base where there is no earth. Here base means ayatana. The word base is used for we started said 6 sense bases, ayatana. The same word is used here in this place. That there he said there is because that base where there is no earth, no water, no fire, no air, no base consisting of infinity of space, no base consisting of infinity of consciousness, no base consisting of nothingness, no base consisting of neither perception nor non-perception, neither this world, no another world, no birth, neither sun, no moon. Here, because I say there is no coming, no going, no staying, no deceasing, no uprising, no fixed, not movable. It has no support. Just this is the end of suffering. Now, end of suffering is also called ayatana. What is that ayatana? End of suffering ayatana is nibbana. Nibbana. Nibbana also is called dhatu. Nibbana is called ayatana. Now, end of suffering also is ayatana. Now you can see, we mentioned at some point, consciousness cannot go beyond mentality and materiality. It returns to mentality and materiality. Consciousness cannot go beyond that. But when one sees, when suffering ceases to exist, this ordinary consciousness that we are talking about also ceases to exist. Just the liberation from suffering is there. Now, you may ask, Does the liberation of suffering exist? Does the liberation of suffering exist just like something else? Liberation of suffering is attained, not something exists. You cannot make Nibbana exist. When we use the word exist, it implies that it is subject to change. And therefore, the word exist does not apply to end of suffering. Existing itself is suffering. Buddha said in the Sutta Nipata that whatever the suffering exists, all depends on existence, being. And therefore, this is a very difficult thing to understand. Only when we very mindfully practice meditation and come to this level, we will have a glimpse of it. Until such time, don't bother about it. Just keep practicing understanding dependent origination. When consciousness arises at the same time or simultaneously, mentality, materiality, sixfold base, contact, feelings arise. If there is no consciousness, volitional formations also does not arise. When the consciousness arises, contact, feelings, volitional formations, perception, and attention arise. When the consciousness arises. When they arise, consciousness arises. When the feeling, perception, thought, volitional formations, attention arise, pasa, vedana, perception, sanya, perception, thought, and attention arise. At the same time, consciousness arises. When consciousness arises, they arise. Neither consciousness nor these fundamental factors can arise if there is no materiality. So these three are always connected with each other. So, dependent on consciousness arises formless existence, arupa bhava. Arupa bhava, I mention ayatanas, rupa bhava, arupa bhava. In arupa bhava, there are consciousness. And that is called arupa bhava because of the formless existence. What exists in the formlessness? Consciousness. I mentioned earlier consciousness cannot arise without form. Now we say consciousness arises in formless state. How can we understand this? The formless state means the form is so refined, insignificant, you even don't know that it exists. Example. Suppose a monk, he can be a layman or anybody. In this case, I use the monk since I'm a monk. A monk asks his novice or younger monk to bring his alms bowl. Then the young monk said, Venerable Sir, alms bowl has oil in it. Then the elderly monk would say, bring the bowl, so I need my oil bottle is empty. I need oil. Bring the alms bowl so that I can pour some oil into my bowl, my bottle. Then he would say, Venerable sir, there is no oil. It, does he tell lie? This monk, novice, tell a lie? No, he tells the truth. How? There is no oil enough to pour into a bottle. But the alms bowl is oily because it's made with oil. After eating, washing and so forth, apply some oil to prevent it from getting rushed and put in the sun to dry. But oily is there. Now, so he says first there is oil, meaning it is oily. Then he said there is no oil to pour into a bottle. That means there is no enough oil to pour into something. The oily doesn't mean that there is enough oil to put into a bottle. In both cases, he told the truth. Similarly, when we say there is consciousness in immaterial existence without form, form is so insignificant, just like the oil in the alms bowl. But the consciousness is the prominent factor there in that existence. And therefore, friends, this is how we have to understand the truth in a very subtle way. There are certain things. And then there are beings that exist without perception. They are called asanya satta. And there are beings that exist that have all uh, mentally one consciousness, mental materiality arise in beings with all the five aggregates. Like us, we have all the five aggregates and also we have consciousness. Now, I stop here and I continue this tomorrow. Maybe I can come to end of it. Let us see. For now, we can close this session. And thank you once again for listening and participating in this Dhamma practice, meditation. And we want to wish once again everybody who are suffering from this virus and those who are grieving the loss of their departed relatives and friends. May they be free from that, from all these sufferings and grief. And there are many people who are trying to find out a solution, some pills, vaccines, and some of them are doing their job very well. I hope they come up with a solution, and some are supporting them, providing them material supports, financing and so forth, and others giving them spiritual support, praying and sending them metta, and others, all those who are in power, make decisions. And we want to wish them to be wise, compassionate, and make right decision with understanding. And we all want to wish all this to happen, and may all of them be free from suffering and return to normal life and live long in good health and finally attain supreme blissful state called Nibbana.